Welcome to the David Goad Show. It's a show all about communication. Most of the time, we're talking about public speaking, one to many. But I also like to dig into those scenarios where you're one-on-one, trying to influence, impact, and inform. So I brought a guest on the show today who's an expert in all of those things. Her name is Anita Hodges, and she's a business coach for sales and influence. Anita, welcome to the show.
Hi, David. It's good to be here. Thank you.
Well, I invited you because you and I were having a chit-chat. And you mentioned a phrase that got my attention, and I wanted to dig into that today. It was called speaking to the subconscious. And I thought, well, what does that mean? So I thought maybe I'd just let you explain it to our viewers here. What do you mean by speaking to the subconscious?
Well, David, whenever we're in a conversation, whether we realize it or not, we're speaking to two levels of conscious. We're speaking to the conscious brain, and we're speaking to the subconscious brain as well. The thing is it's the subconscious brain that makes decisions, and then the conscious brain just defends that. So if we're in any situation we're trying to influence people or make a sale, we need to know which brain we need to be speaking to.
Well, it's both brains then, right? Okay. Well, let's talk about, because I've heard a lot about speaking to your own subconscious, like being in tune and helping to motivate and energize yourself. But now you're talking about really tuning into somebody else's, what's not being heard necessarily.
Right. And here's the thing. Intuitively, we're doing it all the time anyway. But when we know exactly what we're doing, then we can do it more on purpose. So the subconscious mind speaks in things, it responds to imagery, responds to emotion. It's in the present tense at all times. So we want to speak to it in present tense. And it just, it wants to live in an emotion, right? So we want to speak with things. We might even ask someone we're talking to them, imagine this, right? Or tell a story. You're a storyteller, because that bypasses critical thinking, allows people to be in a place where they are just kind of living in the subconscious, where they can make an emotional decision.
Okay, now you're speaking my language. Storytelling. I've been in marketing for a long time, so I know exactly what you're talking about there. And the story does evoke emotion and goes to a deeper place than just a surface, people reading text, for example, and getting informed from a brochure. And so tell me a little bit more about how this manifests in a real life scenario. You have a coaching client, you could share maybe what the methodology is a little bit?
Yeah, I'd love to help you with that. Matter of fact, I'm going to give you a little tip. It's something that I use all the time. It's called PCAT, and it's an acronym. So P stands for problem. We name whatever the problem is. C is critical bypass, moving past the conscious thought, critical bypass. A is accessing resources, and T for transformational thoughts, PCAT. Okay. So the other day I was working with a client of mine who had an investment that he wanted to make. It was a really, really sound investment. It really looked great. And even though everything is always a little bit of risk, this was a good one. But he was stuck. His problem was he was stuck with certain things that made him afraid. Certain investment, monetary, etc. So we used PCAT on him. We named the problem, where the stops were. And then I said, you know what, if we could just wave a magic wand over this, right? And just all those problems were gone. What would it look like for you to be in that investment? What would it look like? How could you do it? How would it benefit your life? And we don't have to worry about any of the problems anymore. So we bypassed, right, that critical thinking. And he got really involved in that. And then I said, well, how could we put that together? So he began to access his resources. And by the time he was done, he realized he had all kinds of ways to get past those initial problems. And that afternoon, he went out and got into that investment. It's been a great thing for him.
It reminds me a lot of visualization exercises that athletes do. It's like
Absolutely.
Yourself crossing the finish line, making that three-pointer, and you have to see it really before you can believe it and do it, right?
Right, exactly. And actually that's a form of like hypnosis. It is speaking to the subconscious.
All right, so how do I put this into play? If I want to learn more about this, because I know we can't solve it all here in this short video today, but could people, well, look, you have your information right over your left shoulder. That's one
I
way to reach
do.
out to you. I'll put it in the text below the video as well. But what would you recommend? Maybe like a initial discussion if somebody's trying to access this channel to learn more from you about it?
Sure. Usually people call me and they want to have maybe a 30-minute phone call just to make sure that what it is they're looking for is what I've got. We talk about it, and usually 20, 30 minutes, and then they know whether this is what they're looking for or not. Happy to do that.
Okay, and to the skeptical buyer, which I can be sometimes,
Right.
give me the 30 seconds netted out now. Why should I look at using this channel of speaking to the subconscious in my career and my job as a salesperson or an influencer?
If there's anything that you're doing where you need to influence people for a sale or for promotions or dealing with human beings, if you're really just not hitting the mark, it could be that you're not speaking to the subconscious correctly, and you're just completely missing the wealth of influence that you could have. And there's ways to do that. So it would deeply help your influence and your sales one way or another.
All right, well, that's going to be the last word because it was a really good word. Okay, Anita. So, and thank you so much. I enjoyed learning a little bit more about it, and I would love to have you back on the show to go a little deeper into some of these topics. Would you be willing to do that?
I'd be happy to.
All right, there it is. Speaking to the subconscious for influence. Learn more about it. Ask Anita Hodges, and thanks for watching today. We appreciate you watching the David Goad Show. Thanks, Anita.